Parents of Reddit, have you ever caught your child watching pee? And if so, did they know you caught them? How did it play out? At my house around Christmas we usually have a bunch of people over. Family friends from all over come and spend a few days. So one day my mom was up early and went on the computer where she found pee up on Google. Now I was about 14ish at that time with my brother being 12. My friends over here were 12, 17, and 20, so it could have been any of us. So my mom asked and none of us said it was us. But my brother and I were the obvious suspects. So after a few days the heat died down and nothing became of it. 5 years later when I was 19, about a year ago, I was on my dad's phone to Google something as my phone was dead, and I found how he was Googling pee, but just left it up on Google and didn't close it, so anyone would see it if they opened his phone. Then it hit me that it was him that fateful night, as any of us kids wouldn't have been stupid enough to leave it open. That's when I called the 20-year-old friend at the time and told him, as he thought it was me. We had a good laugh that the mystery was finally over. TLDR. Mom finds pee on computer during holiday party. Thinks it's me or brother. 5 years later we find out it was my dad. Not a parent, just older brother. I was watching TV, and my brother was on the computer, which was behind the couch I was sitting on. I hear an overwhelming silence, and turn around to see my younger brother staring into a pee compilation video, and I just turned around and kept watching TV, desperately trying not to think about it. Frick man, that's super awkward. I have caught my son watching pee once where I left work early, and he was on headphones. Don't think he knew, but now that I'm an adult, it's really easy for parents to know what you're doing. But that doesn't mean you stop beating your meat, kids. Or beating your kids' meat. I accidentally hit back on the family computer after my 8-year-old son had been using it. It opened up a Google search for small bobs. My wife was like, I'm not sure if I should feel insulted or complimented. And sure if son realistic expectations for breast size or prefers midgets. Not the same thing. But when I was 13 I was jerking it and my dad walked in. It wouldn't have even been that bad if he had confronted me, but I saw him and hastily tried to hide it, and he just started laughing his butt off. It hurts to think about to this day. I feel this is how I would react if I ever caught my future child watching pee. No scolding, maybe a serious talk later, just snickers and hysterical laughter. Obligatory, not a parent, but frick it. My little brother is roughly 8 years younger than I am, so at the time of his most embarrassing tale, he was about 12. We are a somewhat large family. There are 6 of us all together, and we only had one family laptop. I opened it up one afternoon to do some browsing and found hentai pee. Obviously it wasn't me. I look at hentai on my phone in an incognito tab like a goddamn adult. So I call in the boy. The boy takes one look at the screen and explodes into denials. I, the adult in his life, his role model, his big sister who has now seen his pee preferences, burst out laughing. Then I teach him how to delete his history and inform him that if I ever see it again, I'm changing the default browser to Bing. You're probably joking about the Bing thing, but it actually is much better for finding pee than Google is. Never got caught in the act, but I am quite sure I saw a playlist containing some of the videos I watched when my dad left his computer unlocked, and I happened to notice in the early 2000s. That was sort of weird. My mom once remarked that it's funny how your room is a pigsty but your women are sorted out neatly. This was back in the early 90s when PCs and such weren't that common, so whenever I had the time I downloaded pics. Videos were rare then, and printed them out and kept them in neat little folders I hid in a bottom drawer. My mom obviously found them. This happened last year and it was a really close friend of mine. Some background. At the time we were 1 year past college graduation and he was still living at his parents' house working and saving money to get his own place. Also his parents are super religious. Anyway, after years of whacking it to free low quality internet pee, the guy decides to up his game and illegally torrent some 1080p goodness. I'm talking Brizz's high quality hour-long videos. All is well and he has racked up quite a collection, until his mom gets a warning letter from Xfinity in the mail. Someone on their account had been illegally downloading copyrighted material. Then the letter proceeded to list all of the videos he had downloaded. His dad proceeded to read this list out loud at the dinner table in front of him. his mother and his older brother. Of course later on the dad and brother talked him to on the side and had a laugh, but his mom still hasn't gotten over it to this day. And as good friends we will never let him live it down as well. My mom's boyfriend was always snooping in my room, so he eventually found a bunch of hentai pictures I had printed like 2 years prior to the incident. No confrontation. He just yelled at my mom about how sick and disgusting I was. He was such a freaking butthole, lol. No confrontation. He just yelled at my mom. What? I went to a Christian high school. One of my closest friends has a younger brother in junior high who went on a church retreat. The camp counselor, who I went to high school with, thought it would be a good idea to tell a large group of preteens that he struggled with addiction to pee. This resulted in my friend's brother coming home to his mom asking, "Mom, what kind of drug is pee?" Yes, via oppress their orientation because we weren't allowed to experiment physicality either strategy. My dad caught me jerking my gherkin to Nat Geo channel when they were showing topless African tribes women. It was the most humiliating moment of my life at that time. This was over 20 years ago when pee was really only accessible when I could convince my older brother to hook me up with a mag. My dad just laughed. He still laughs about it to this day. I get a chuckle out of it too. My parents caught me stealing my dad's pee. Backstory: when I was in high school, mid-90s, I don't know what my parents were doing, but my dad had a bunch of PVHS tapes, and I found out he was keeping them under the couch in his room. Apparently I was really ballsy because I would sneak into their room when they were asleep on Saturday nights, get one of the videos from under the couch, have a late night jerk-a-thon and then put it back in the morning. I did this a couple times, then woke up one Saturday morning to hear them in their room going, well, where could it be? It was here yesterday, and I knew I was in trouble. I snuck it back, and later that day, my mom called me and my next youngest brother, 1 year younger, into their room and gave us a lecture, with no one actually admitting fault. Apparently my brother had been watching the videos too somehow. After that they kept all the pee in a padlocked Rubbermaid box, the kind with the hinge lid, in their closet. I figured out how to take the hinge pins out of that and get into it too. Never underestimate the resolve of frisky teenage boys to get pee once they find it. I cut out pictures from my dad's pee mags because I knew he would be too embarrassed to ask me if I'd been stealing his pee. When I was 11, I used my grandma's laptop to watch pee. Later during the week my mom got a call from my grandma. She then gave me the death stare and asked, "What were you doing on grandma's laptop?" And that's the story of why I decided to kill myself. I am now dead. My family is nudist and we teach our kids that masturbation isn't sinful or anything, but you still need to do it in private. I've walked in on my older 2 sons doing it and they are nonchalant most of the time. I haven't actually seen screens or anything, but sometimes my son is looking at his phone while going at it, and he acts super guilty when I walk in. Not sure if he is looking at pee or what, but no big deal. Only time I caught someone was this summer when we visited family. We were staying with my sister and she asked me to go grab my nephew's tablet. He was sleeping next to it, and so I just grabbed it without waking him up. I looked at what he had up and yep, pee. I closed it before bringing it to his mom and that was it. If I caught my kids watching pee I probably wouldn't give a crap as long as they weren't putting viruses on the computer. This is kind of the reverse, but when I was a kid, about 13, my mum came up to me with a pint glass she found in my room with weird white clear stuff floating in the water in it. To this day I have no idea what it was, but she said it was in my room. She said it was disgusting, and I knew what she thought it was. She wouldn't say though, and I was too embarrassed to say what I thought she thought it was, so that was that. I still think about it sometimes, and that she still thinks I jizzed in a glass and left it for someone to find. Great. Thank goodness. I thought a new meme was being born. Before phones, I had tried to print some pictures of big black booties. One picture didn't print, so I thought, frick it, and turned off the computer. My 2 cousins and mom for some reason used the computer later on and the picture printed out. Frick, I was probably 13 or so. I come from a family that's the kind that would judge if it was an interracial couple. I'm white, but dang I like me some big booty. But dang I like me some big booty. FTFY. Years ago when iPods came out we all used the same one in my house. I was checking the search history and found a search for Miley Cyrus naked. Of course this was when she was maybe 14. I showed my wife who asked me if I did it. Thankfully my oldest son who was maybe 9 at the time admitted to typing the request. If he hadn't admitted to it, I believe my wife would have divorced me. My father has worked in the IT field going on 22 years. 10 years ago, when I turned 18, I was moving out to my first apartment and he thought it would be a humbling experience to hand me a stack of papers with every site I had ever visited under his roof. Never brought it up before other than an occasional "you're a teenager" joke. On that day though, I was humbled so much. Never told my mom. Solid man. Still have a good laugh about it to this day. My dad caught me one time, but not in the act. I had to tell him. He had a block on our satellite where he could block all of the movie channels. What he didn't know was that once he unlocked it to watch whatever, everything was unlocked. He bought me a pay-per-view WCW match one time. Midway through he had to go read my little sister a bedtime story. That was when I quickly changed it to a 900S channel, which was P. I changed it back and made sure it wasn't on last channel before he got back. He made it back right after the show about my bedtime. He walks right in and over to the TV and proceeds to remove the videotape from the VCR. He goes, "Glad I recorded this for the guys to watch at the fire station tomorrow." My heart sank. I had to tell him what I had done. Talk about embarrassing. TLDR, dad unlocked pay-per-view for me to watch a show. I changed it to P. Did not know my dad was recording it on the VCR for his work. Not a parent, but from the receiving end. Jiggity. When I was a young teen boy, my mom walked into my room at the same time that I clicked a link for an adult site I hadn't been to before and didn't know anything about. Turned out to be a gay site. So then not only did I have to deal with my mom caught me surfing P, but also seriously, I'm not gay. I'm really not. I'm pretty sure they didn't really buy it until I got an apartment with my girlfriend like 7 years later. So yeah, that was fun. Look guys, I got an apartment with my girlfriend. Nubsource87. We've told you 100 times it's okay that you are gay. You can stop going to such extreme measures to hide it. Not really the same thing, but I received a nude from my girlfriend while my sister's boyfriend walked past me. He has been her boyfriend for several years, so he knows our family well. Anyways, he happened to look down at my phone right as I opened the message. He was like, "Ooh, nudge nudge, wink wink." Probably the weirdest moment of my life. Caught my 11-year-old behaving suspiciously under the blankets and closing his browser screen when I went in his room once. Checked his history, and he was watching a let's play about a game where you take a bath with an anime girl and can beat her up. I gave him a 1967 Playboy to try and steer him towards real women. FFS, show him some sites. He will continue to the dark side if all he has for reference are pictures. I'm not even sure my mom knows, but my friends have referred to me as the Gandalf of hentai, their weird nickname for me, in person at dinners before, so that's probably a red flag. So my parents didn't catch him per se, but my mom told me the story because I was at college when it happened. My brother had heard about those sites from a couple friends at summer camp. When he came home, he decided to look at one of them to see what all the hype was about. When he got on the page, a pop-up window appeared with something about downloading illegally in the FBI. He thought he walked into a trap and the FBI was onto him. He shut down the computer, unplugged it, and shut off his phone. His teachers called my parents because he'd been acting jumpy every time he got called to the office. He thought it was the police. Finally my mom pulled him aside and asked him what was up. He started crying about how the police were after him for looking illegal P. My mom tried to conceal her laughter as she told him he'd have to explain this to my dad, which worried him more. My dad burst out laughing, like couldn't contain himself. I still make fun of my brother for it. Not a parent, but my mom is a very religious woman to the point where I was even able to play any games with guns or watch wrestling because it promoted violence. Even though she was a police officer. Anyways, she was upgrading our computer and the IT guy found all my P sites I went on. They happened to be gay as well. My mom, being a 6'3" intimidating woman that she is, freaked out about her son. 13 or 14 at the time, was not only watching P, but he was gay too. She proceeded to give me full-on lectures on how it was dangerous to be gay and that I would have a hard time in school and in life if I choose my lifestyle. She then proceeded to get me my own computer with GTA 3 installed, trained me on how to use different types of firearms, took marital arts training, and learned the basics of automotive upkeep. I think it was her way of putting some hair on my chest since I did not have a father. That story was a goddamn roller coaster. Completely ignoring the title, my ex and I caught her dad. He didn't hear us come through the front door, so she opens the front door and he jumps up in his dressing gown, slams his laptop shut. Hey guys, alright, how's things? Are you wanting dinner takeaway? We can get a DVD. Have you seen your sister anyway? What time are you guys off out again? Reverse of the topic. My brother and I were going to visit my grandfather to check up on him. He lived alone and it was going to be a quick hi, how you doing? I was driving and I park outside his little cottage that he had at this retirement community. My brother jumps out of the car. I think I was 27. He was 25 and heads to the door. He knocks and starts to open the door. Takes one step inside. I'm about 5 feet behind him and he just steps back, closes the door and says, "Get back in the car." I ask him, is he not there? What's wrong? His car is in the driveway. He just says start the car, but I won't till he tells me why. Finally says GPA was watching P. Two blacks chicks fricking a white dude. Has to have been VHS since he didn't have a DVD player or a computer. I start to cry, I'm laughing so hard. Brother is just sitting there awkwardly. I ask, did he see you or hear you? No. He was facing away and made no move. Lucky for us he had terrible hearing. I couldn't tell our parents fast enough. Mom and dad, his son, laughed their butt off and now it's become a running joke that my brother has to go into our elderly relations homes first. I've never been caught, thankfully. However, there was one time that was too close for comfort. I was sitting on my couch which faced to the right if you were to walk into the door for my room. I was laying lengthwise on it and had my iPad on my thighs while jacking. I was only in my underwear and my mom didn't knock this time out of all times. I somehow managed to turn the volume off in time and lay the iPad down over my dong so she couldn't see it. She obviously didn't think anything of it because she literally had a 5-minute convo with me sitting on my couch with only an iPad covering my dong. She knew. I told him I checked his browsing history, and I did, since I made the firewall. Mostly it was because he was playing Neopets instead of schoolwork. But one day, I got a report of P. The pattern was unmistakable. Neopets, 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 anime, Neopets, Neopets, anime, anime, hentai, anime, hentai, Bugbestumelons, Ashian comes let's, Ashian webcam whores, big boobies, Pornhub, porn and more porn, Neopets, Neopets. He was 15, so I just started gathering stats. After a few weeks, I had his big 10 sites. I did research and studied the domains, companies, and did some background on the models he chose. Oh my gosh, my wife giggled. What's he watching? She and I have been pretty positive physically. She used to sell adult toys. So one day, I sat down and said, "Hey, about the P you have been browsing." He denied it, of course, but I ignored that and went through each of his top 10. I explained unrealistic expectations of women, how P was exaggerated like how cartoons exaggerate comedy and action, how the top 10 were actual just 4 separate companies, how the webcam business worked, Asian slave trade problems, and the history of porn. I then explained I didn't care what he saw, but he can't watch anything under 18. He wasn't, and be careful of pop-ups and viruses, which he was fairly savvy to already. I then went over fricking, and how fricking was healthy and fun if done right, but don't think P reflects anything realistically. Camera angles, makeup, lighting, editing, and acting. Then I pointed out some of his favorite models, including 2 without makeup. He pretty much stared straight ahead the whole time. I pointed that out and said it was natural to feel uncomfortable. The concept of your parents fricking is normally that way to prevent our species from inbreeding. Then I said, remember, homework first, no underage stuff, enjoy. For weeks, no P. Then his urges got the better of him. I never brought it up again. Year later, one of his friends laughed about that. He was so freaked out. He thought you were bluffing. 50% creepy, 50% endearing. I was at my dad's with my computer in the living room of his apartment and I was fapping and watching P with the computer face to his bedroom door. He opened it and I didn't realize it until a couple seconds later. He said, "What's that?" and I had quickly changed it and showed him another thing and told him it was just this. He was groggy cause he just woke up, but I'm pretty sure he understood. I also saw my dad screenshotting naked women on his phone. When I was about 5 years old, I woke up from a nap stripped down naked and snuck into my mom and dad's room and opened his bottom dresser drawer where I knew he kept his Playboy magazines. I had no idea what freaking or whacking off was, but I guess getting naked and looking at a Playboy sounded like a good idea at that moment. As soon as I started to grab one, I hear my dad's voice, "What the heck are you doing?" I hadn't even noticed he had been lying on their bed dozing. I immediately thought of what sounded like a reasonable lie. I just woke up from my nap and I peed the bed, so I took off my underwear and came in here looking for another pair that mom might have put in your dresser on accident. He just looked at me as I slowly went back to my room, and today, due to this quick ability to tell a lie under extreme circumstance without hesitation, I am a very successful timeshare salesman. Wow, that's one coherent 5-year-old. When I went overseas on deployment, my father-in-law came to stay with my wife as he and the mill were moving to our town. When I came home, I thought, hey, haven't checked my emails in 9 months. Might do that. When I went to login, autofill put Traniliver45 into the username box. I deleted all history and cookies right then and asked the Phil when he was getting their own place that night. This is the same guy who abused me for having a taillight out on my car he borrowed after he got booked for DUI, reasoning that it was my fault he got pulled over. Tops guy. Divorce has its benefits. My parents never caught me, I think. Optimistically, I found ways of quickly concealing it and acting normal in the event someone entered the room. We had a no locked door policy. Sometimes people knock. Other times the parents just open up the door with no warning other than the sound of approaching footsteps. Still, on 2 separate occasions a parent has barged into the room just as I was nutting. I managed to cover things up in time and play it cool, but it feels so uncomfortably anticlimactic. Hell, having to hold a brief conversation with them while I'm secretly jizzing in my pants. What a waste of a decent CM. My dad was an avid P consumer and I hated it as a teen. It felt so awkward knowing he had a cabinet that was locked up with dirty movies and mags. However, puberty made its way over to my testes and I pick-locked it and took a few for myself. He eventually found out I was surfing for it when the internet first gained public traction in 1995 to 1996. He found out somehow and asked me to show him what I was watching. It was super freaking awkward and he eventually said, "Well, this is fine, as long as you don't watch the hardcore stuff." I was 13 at the time. Caught my 10-year-old looking at boobies on YouTube. Poor kid was terrified. Told him it was completely natural to be curious about these things, but the internet is the last place to be informed about fricking and how things work. There are far too many misrepresentations of women online. P is essentially the male version of Disney movies. It teaches you to expect far more than you will probably get. We had a long talk and we directed him to more age-appropriate educative material. P is essentially the male version of Disney movies. Great analogy. My first time exploring P, my parents had just left the house and my younger brother and I stayed home. He was in his room, so I hopped on the computer and typed P into Google. I looked at some girl-on-girl website for a couple minutes, then got scared and got off. My mom came home and saw the website. Can't recall the URL, but it started with X and had fuck generals somewhere. She started to yell at me and ask why that was there. All I could say was, "I don't know mom, it wasn't me." I was the only one that actually knew how to use the computer though. Needless to say, I was not allowed back on the computer for a good long while. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.